Hello, Daddy. Hello, Mom. Welcome to Secular Sexuality, the ACA show that is a motherfucking cherry bomb. Back tonight is your wild not a girl, Bianca. And
hello.
Joining us tonight, Black Widow and Femme fatale, Miss O'Kissed. As a veteran in the burlesque and fetish fashion scenes, Miss O'Kissed is also an ace activist and volunteer.
And we are taking your calls on all things secular asexuality today. So hit us up at 512-991-9242 or call the show from anywhere in the world for free at tiny.cc/callsex because the show is starting right now.
All right. Well, I'd like to start by trying to define asexuality in general, and then, of course, learn a little bit more about your experience. Can you give us a primer, if you would?
Sure. I mean, asexuality is defined as someone who does not experience sexual attraction to anybody or any gender, and does not wish to act in a sexual way upon the people with which they are attracted to in maybe other ways. Super clean cut, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah, I'm sure there are a lot of folks that are kind of reaching for some paper, trying to take notes, trying to maybe diagram all of that. But in general, I'd love to hear just kind of what it's been like for you and what that's meant.
Wow. I mean, because I'm kind of old, it's been a wild ride. Growing up, people didn't really talk about it much because I'm 40 now. So growing up was
yeah,
pretty much, yeah. So a lot of the time, I would kind of expect this thing to appear. It's like, I'm just a late bloomer. And in my head, sometimes I'm like, but maybe I am a late bloomer. I'm like, no, I'm not. So it was kind of, it was a little weird at first. And then it was a little bit like being colorblind, where you don't necessarily realize that what you're feeling is different to what other people were feeling. So I'm like, well, I find that person attractive in a way that I kind of want to go and, I don't know, play video games and hang out with them. So I guess that's the same. And I managed to write that one till almost 30. So yeah, it was challenging for a while, because you get into relationships with people and things would be going great. And then it was a distinct pattern where things went from great to not great in a very similar way. And then, I don't know when I first came across the term asexual, but I did, and eventually I thought about it. And the more I thought about it, eventually I was like, no, that makes sense, and that's me. So then, just figuring out how to, navigate things from there, because it's not always that easy, because there's a lot of expectations that people will still have that you then have to kind of work with and work around. Also, my partner is not asexual, so that introduced a lot of challenges, I suppose, and creative problem solving in a relationship. But yeah, so it was kind of weird, essentially growing up kept in the dark or ignorant about my own orientation. And I'm really happy for all the kids growing up today who don't have to go through that.
Yeah, because asexuality is still very much not talked about, even in the queer community. I feel like there are certain identities that don't get a lot of airtime, for lack of a better term, and asexuality is definitely one of them.
Yeah. Which is a shame.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, even in prepping this episode, I couldn't believe how few media examples there were to draw from. Because I love to be able to say, you may recognize this concept as introduced by such and such in this film or that film, but basically, unless you've seen BoJack Horseman or a lot of Tumblr fan fiction, I don't really know what examples to give people.
I mean, there are a few that Sex Education in season 2 introduced one ace character very quickly. But yeah, there's not a whole lot.
Yeah, well, I guess we'll just hold on to Todd Chavez, the forever symbol. Right? Who doesn't?
That's amazing.
Charming. So in having this conversation, we don't need to give a like full-on, vocabulary lesson, but I'd like to make sure we kind of have some words straight, just so we're having this discussion. We've already thrown out like asexual and ace, arrow. What else comes to mind? What else do we need to know?
Okay, well, obviously asexual is, person with zero sexual and like interest, like sexual attraction for other people. Aromantic is basically the same thing, but for romantic orientations. A lot of people think that because someone's asexual, they wouldn't want a relationship with anybody, which is not true. I mean, it is for some, but for a lot of people, they're still looking for that kind of connection just without the sex. Then we have like the sort of grayer area. If human sexuality is a spectrum, we've got like hypersexual on one side and then asexual on the other side, but then there's like this sort of gray area as you get into like the more asexual kind of identity. So like gray sexual would be someone who occasionally experiences some amount of sexual attraction to other people that they may wish to act on, but to a lesser extent to like most like sexual people, or as we might call them, allosexual people. And then there's like demisexual people who kind of feel like the same way as like asexual people do. There's like nothing sexual there for them, but sometimes that will like kick in almost like a light switch with people who they've got a strong emotional connection to, and they're already like in a sort of bonded relationship with, and then sometimes like all of a sudden like there it is. So we end up calling those like it's like aspec identities, which is identities on the asexual end of the spectrum, because there's a lot in common, there's a lot different, but a lot of people, even if they're still sexual people, on some level will feel somewhat disenfranchised by regular sexual, like sort of, I guess, people, and identify more towards the asexual end. And they kind of make up like the beautiful community that we have.
Yeah, so introducing a little ish into your asexual.
Right, you got the asexuals and then asexual-ish.
Ish, right? Light. Well, I'm glad to hear you kind of busting through a lot of the assumptions or misconceptions that ace folks experience